Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, spooky, and otherworldly and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. You can also go to our website, creepinitrealshow.com. Without further ado, welcome to this week's episode.
Good morning. Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show. I'm one of your hosts, Miss Moni, over here in California. And with me today is Yardley. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, Moni. Happy 4th of July weekend. I guess technically this is the weekend that everybody's partying, right?
This weekend, I'm going to do something on the 7th because Pachanga right down the street from my house is having a fireworks show that we'll be able to see from the backyard. So, but yeah, I think a lot of people are partying this weekend. So what about you? Are you doing anything in particular, Mr. Yardley?
No, I'm just trying to relax as much as I can, and that's a win for me.
Nice. Christy, how you doing?
Hello. Hey. Living the life over here. I just poured myself a wine spritzer, which I haven't had since like 5th grade, and topped it off with wild blueberries my son picked out of the yard yesterday, and ready and excited to talk about the show today.
That sounds amazeballs. So speaking of summer things, to jump right into the show, I posted last week on our Facebook and our Instagram that I was at the beach, as I mentioned when we were recording last week, that I was going straight to the beach, and something strange washed up onto the shore. Everybody at the beach was taking a look at it, and my bestie was there with me, and she was certain it was a human thigh because it didn't look like any kind of sea creature that you've ever seen. It was a big chunk mammal looking type of meat. So now I come to find that we were at Newport, but Oceanside is actually the closest beach to where I live, and a woman was accosted by they estimated for it to be an 11 to 12 foot great white, which those are fairly rare, especially close to shore. And it bit her canoe while she was paddling in Oceanside. And oh my God, like people are always like, you have earthquakes in California and fires. How can you stand it? And I'm like, really, it's the sharks. So not that it's very often, but when it is, it's close to shore and it's a great fucking white that's enormous.
Wow, that is insane. That's got to be the most helpless feeling, though.
Yeah. Well, she said she saw it coming and she tried to paddle as fast as she could, and it still bit her canoe and took off. Luckily it left, but oh my gosh.
Did you guys ever figure out what the hell? I saw the picture. Did you guys ever figure out what the hell that was? Or
no, we never did, and the lifeguards came and took it. And my dad told an interesting story, though, as a former Fish and Game officer, about how him and the guys used to confiscate animals that didn't belong here, for instance, like alligators or different things. And so one day they went in the back of a bunch of businesses to a body of water and just dumped out all of these animals that aren't native to California. They were dead, and just dumped out all of these confiscated animals because what else are you going to do with them? Mm-hmm. And then a few weeks later he saw a local news report talking about the mystery of like the alligator that washed up on shore and all this stuff. So I'm thinking that he's surmising that maybe somebody was cleaning out a meat storage, because he's like, that looks like a pig thigh. So that maybe somebody cleaned something out into the water and it washed up on shore. But I think with the theme of today that it was a human thigh and it was mare deer involved.
Interesting.
So Yardley, you have a smelly airline passenger?
Yeah, so for weird news, this is actually on a CBS affiliate. So apparently back on May the 29th, a Russian guitarist by the name of Andrei Sushelin, he boarded a flight from Spain's Canary Islands, and he gave off such a pungent odor that other passengers started to faint and vomit everywhere. Now,
Oh my
this
God.
is this is where it gets taken up a notch. So apparently, the smell got so bad that they tried to put him in the bathroom, for the rest of the flight, but that wouldn't work. The stink was still coming out. So the pilot had to actually make an emergency landing in Portugal. Now, we find out a little bit later on that apparently he had visited the doctor prior to that first flight with his girlfriend, and the doctor told him that it was an ordinary beach infection and gave him some antibiotics. But it turns out that it was essentially like tissue necrosis, pretty much meaning that the flesh, the fat, and the muscles were dying off from an infection.
Ugh.
And oh my gosh. So at the end of the day, what ends up happening is this infection, they had to put him into a medically induced coma, and he underwent a lot of surgeries to remove the infection because his wife was kind of updating all of his friends about what was going on Facebook. And on June the 7th, she wrote, "There's nothing more to cut. The antibiotics weren't working." And a couple of weeks after that, his organs failed and he died on the 25th. And that is kind of crazy. I mean, but for me, as extreme as that odor was, it's totally bacteria and just everything that was making him smell that way. I'm just wondering how that first doctor before his flight just gave such a simple diagnosis and just gave him antibiotics, because I know that it had to have been just as funky when he visited that doctor.
Yeah. And that's what Kim was saying last week about the smell of dead flesh and all that.
I was just getting ready to say that. I was just getting ready to say, this is some Kim from People Are Wild shit.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, does people from Russia smell that bad? I mean, I don't think so. They shower and stuff. So how can somebody walk into a doctor's office and there not be like red flags going off everywhere? I can't imagine.
Yeah, because do you think that, because I don't think that it could have accelerated that quickly to before, he got on that flight to where the doctor wouldn't have been able to smell that it was. I mean, it's just got to be the worst. I mean,
that's disgusting.
For everybody to just start puking and you're not feeling well and you're causing everybody else a bunch of pain, literally from vomit. It's just got to be the worst. But I actually, to be honest, I think I don't think we would have even let him on the plane at all. Like if it smelled like that.
No.
It would have been something like we would have had to make put his funk on the terror watch list.
Yeah.
Different things.
Funk watch list.
Yeah. But that's pretty rough. Unfortunately, he died, but maybe his death will make them kind of, reevaluate how they analyze those types of infections.
His death won't be in vain.
It'll just be in smell.
Yeah.
So, Christy, tell me about penises that we can see from space.
Yeah. Can you imagine having a dick that can be seen from space like this Australian lake bed does? Because that would be kind of scary. I'm just saying.
It looks amazing. I mean, like epic is what I mean.
Yeah. Let's not get too scared of it because it's just a drawing, but you can actually get on Google Maps and check this lake bed out. Some dude from Geelong, Victoria, Australia. I mean, I'm assuming it's a dude because I don't know a lot of women that walk around drawing penises, and especially ones so big that you can see them from space. But it's actually attracting quite a few people online, and it's got a 5-star review for the attraction. And you can get on there and look up this location and see this dry lake bed in Australia. There is literally a giant dick drawn into it, and it's even has like the little squirt droplets coming out of it. Like, he was paid attention to detail on this. Yes. And I'm telling you what, I love Australians. They are freaking fantastic. And this just was like only in Australia, and I'm so here for it. So congrats,
you got that
Australia.
Big dick down under.
Exactly.
But how are they talking about what is this? I'm kind of reading where someone was saying it was supposed to be like an oak tree.
That's not a goddamn oak tree. I mean,
I'm just scrolling down.
But also, that's a dick. So
yeah, that's what it looks like.
No, how in the world could that be an oak tree? It even has the little, like, yeah, no, that's not
Those
an
are
oak
the
tree.
leaves falling off the
Yeah,
oak
no,
tree.
no. If that's an oak tree, it has really big nuts. I'm just saying.
Yeah, it does.
Agreed.
It has big nuts and we
So,
cannot lie.
exactly. So,
So,
congrats to them. They have 5-star
yeah,
review on their lake
nicely
bed,
done.
and I guess that's the way you get it done. You draw a big penis on something and 5-star
Yes,
reviews. So,
very nice.
congratulations.
Golf claps to you, prankster.
That's right.
You have a show shout out for a show called Evil Genius on Netflix.
Yes. Okay, so I watched the show last night, and I mean, it's got pretty good reviews. Some people think it went on too long, and honestly, I did not think that at all. If you like what the fuck true crime, this is a really good show. And I mean, in my defense, I had like a 4-month-old when this show, whenever the news came out about this, but I did not know about this. In Erie, Pennsylvania, it's about a pizza delivery guy who robs a bank with a bomb wrapped around his neck.
Mm-hmm.
And the cops pull him over, and he's sitting there, and he's like, they've got him in handcuffs, and they're all like, you know, surrounded him but far away from him because he's got a bomb, you know, around his neck. And they called the bomb squad, and he's like, I need to get, you know, this thing off my neck. I need help. There's keys. I'm on like this scavenger hunt to find them. And like 10 miles, the bomb squad was 10 miles out, and all of a sudden you hear these beeps, and he dies. It explodes around his neck, and he dies. And it's just the most bizarre story. Seriously, it's called You Can't Make This Up, like on Netflix. Tags it that way. You literally, I mean, the story behind it is so bizarre and weird.
Huh.
It has mental illness and like evil geniuses and all this weird shit. And I had to say, I was really into it. So
Okay.
That's interesting.
definitely I
I'll
recommend.
check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always
Clicking it on
good to
my
get
list
some
now.
Netflix titles in particular.
Yeah, hey, they're really doing it right. I'm saying there's some good shit on there. But
Some
anyway,
good shit. So this week we are doing cults and some maybe serial killer level type of stuff. And it led me to a documentary that I didn't watch before I asked you guys to watch it. And it sounds like Christy did okay with it, but Yardley didn't love it so much. Yardley, do you want to tell me what your thoughts were on it?
Well, basically for me, it was just the length of the documentary, the
Yeah.
initial documentary. I mean, all in all, I mean, when you think about for me, with the issues that she had and with them moving away, it took a lot of courage to kind of separate yourself from society and
Yeah.
to move to the island. So I'll definitely, grant them that. I just think for me, the documentary itself was a slog, but the story, it's okay. And of course, we're going to get into it a little bit more. But even the thing that's supposed to be weird or to make you think, it's a lot of circumstantial, stuff
Mhm.
that's going to be
Yeah.
happening later on. But all in all, I mean, the story, which I had actually heard of prior to you recommending it, I just never really got deep into it because I think PBS or something might have had some type of a special on this. But the topic I thought was great. It was just, I think the way that they formatted the documentary, it was just, it was kind of a long slog.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So the documentary is called The Galapagos Affair, Satan Came to Eden. And it's a fascinating story. I hadn't heard of it. And Miss Christie, I'll let you talk about your thoughts on it in just a second. But the documentary, though, it's on Netflix, and it's a good 2 hours long. And the way that they format it is basically kind of a monotone, which I guess, the characters would have spoken that way if they were reading their own diaries or whatever, but they're reading their own diaries over basically black and white imagery as it flicks through, and it's not the most engaging format. I would have liked to have seen people interviewed that knew about it, historians and that kind of stuff, maybe some reenactments. But Christy, what did you think?
Well, I mean, the concept I can get behind. I mean, they're in from Germany and they're hightailing the fuck out of there because shit's not going so well, during in the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah.
And so I can totally get behind there. I would just want to find a deserted island because I've checked into some deserted islands in the times we're in right now. Yeah, I'm like, I can totally understand that. But I think the problem that you see is they kind of romanticize the whole thing. And the two people that started this adventure in the first place are really not that. I mean, they're kind of not right in the head. I mean, the doctor pulled all his teeth out before even going, and he was a dick. And so the documentary was slow, and I did have to kind of force myself through it. But I thought the story was intriguing, and I I have a pretty good idea in my mind who killed, which we'll get into, the person that this is kind of based around. Not so sure about the original people that came in, though. I don't know about he ends up dying, and there's, people throwing accusations all over the place. I mean, you would think with just, what is there, like 10, 15 people on this island that drama would be avoided, but it was like heightened. So much for finding a deserted island to get away from it.
Oh, for sure. So basically, as we mentioned, it's a couple in the 20s leaving in Germany. They both were married to other people, Dr. Frederick Ritter and is it Dory Strach? She was his medical patient, and she was about 15 years younger than him. And they're both married to other people, but they leave those people to move to the middle of nowhere in Galapagos. And Dr. Ritter knows that he has no plan for having teeth because teeth are just a luxury. So he pulls them out.
Sorry. I know. Tell that to my grandpa, who's God rest his soul, but he did not have teeth. And yeah, that was not a luxury to him, I can tell you.
Yeah. So he pulls his out, but he decides to let his poor wife have them fall out because they have no way of taking care of them on this very rough to live on little island in the Galapagos. So but don't worry, he made a pair of teeth that the two of them could share. Yeah. So
also counting in the fact she's got MS.
Yeah, she's got multiple sclerosis. So he tells her that moving to this island with him, that she will be able to cure herself through mind over matter. And this island is harsh conditions for the most hardened of outdoorsmen, let alone someone who's already very ill. But, never you mind. He takes her away from everything she knows. And so then, they start gaining some notoriety for living on this island and learning this new way. So this is where it's kind of cultish in that this guy is charismatic, Dr. Ritter, and he has this mentality and these philosophies, and people are going to follow what he's doing. So this poor family, the Whitmers, Heinz and Margaret, another couple from Germany, Margaret's pregnant, and they have a child named Henry. And they decided to move onto this island thinking that this doctor was going to help them deliver their baby. But this article literally says, not realizing, though, that he was a deluded dickhead. So they go to the island. The women don't take on very well. They each thinks the other is either too basic or too lofty. And so they basically live separate and tolerant lives of one another and only rely on each other when something is needed. But now enter the Baroness. What did you guys think of the Baroness? Yes, so she's like a siren that lures people to this island, and she wants to build this big hotel, and she brings two lovers and a servant, like kind of badass to start off with. What did you guys think?
Well, I can tell you that she doesn't have very good business sense, because that isn't exactly a place I see very many people heading to per se. It's kind of really, really out of the way,
yes.
And at the time in that time, really, how do you get the information out unless you're like just happen to be cruising by? So she's, I would say, kind of the epitome 1920s independent woman. Like, back then they were really pushing women's rights and owning their shit and apologizing for not, for just not apologizing for who they are. And yeah, I mean, she rolls in with 3 dudes, and they all are her men, and she's like excited about that, and then tries to, and I think successfully, it was alluded to in the documentary, take on all the other dudes on the island too. So she was. I can understand. I can understand why the girls would have been a little pissed off. It's like, you got 3, shit. Give me my one dude. But she bragged about it.
Well, come on, but the other thing is it's never going to work out when you got more than one lover as well, because some of the things that they discussed was, I think that there were some fights between some of those individuals. So that's never going to work out the way that you want it. Something that I was kind of really surprised about, to be honest, was the fact that, you know, some of these people showed up to this island and they were totally convinced that they were going to rough it, so to speak. But for me, when you separate yourself out and you don't know what's on the island, they didn't even bring weapons. They had to like get weapons donated to them from some of the boaters that came by. I mean, the Ritters. I thought that was kind of weird that you would just. I mean, I get it. You know, you want to live off the land, and you know, I think they were staunch vegetarians, right?
Yes. Well, partially because they didn't have any teeth, so
they
decided, let's be vegetarian.
Hard to eat meat with no teeth.
Yes.
Well, he pulled his teeth because what was it? Something about he thought that his gums would harden.
Yeah.
Yes, he thought they would get toughened up by living in the land the way that they were.
Yeah. All right. It's just come on.
He pulled his wife's teeth out as they fell out with like gardening tools, so that was nice of him. I mean, he's really a generous, lovely man. This is Dr. Ritter we're mentioning, but
he also, she was like, because at first it was just the 2 of them, and then when people did show up, they didn't want to have anything to do with them anyway. And then she's like, so bonds with the animals because he's a dick.
Yeah.
And then he's giving her shit because she's bonding with the animals. It's like, what the hell do you want her to do, dude? I mean, you got nobody here. And then he was giving her shit because she wasn't pulling her weight. And it was just I mean, what did you expect? I honestly, like, she signed up for this, though. She left her husband and takes off to a deserted island with her doctor, who she has not had any time with. I mean, new love's great and all, but you really just don't, move to a deserted island to get to really know somebody. I'm just saying. So whatever.
So
she's an idiot. As
Yardley mentioned, there's fighting between the Baroness's 2, what do they call them, servile gigolos. They end up beating the shit out of each other on the regular. And one day, Strach, the woman who came with the doctor, heard a long-drawn shriek midday on 19th of March. And 2 days later, one of the lovers showed up and said that he had patched things up with the Baroness. But then he told Margaret Whitmer a different story, which was that the Baroness and the other lover, Philipson, had been picked up by a millionaire's yacht and had gone to the South Seas and were never coming back. So here's where it starts to get super interesting, was that the Baroness and Philipson were never ever seen again. Like, their bodies were not found, but also Strach mentions that she and Ritter had a vantage point that they would have noticed some millionaire's yacht coming by, and that they claim that never happened. Of course, they're not the most reliable witnesses either. So later on, we have all kinds of doubt being cast between the Whitmers and the Ritters, like what happened to this Baroness. And there was a drought that came to the island that lasted a whole year and made it harder for any of them to find water. Also, so the other lover who had claimed that the Baroness disappeared, he did leave the island with he started throwing around that somebody else had killed or something else had happened to this Baroness. And now suddenly he leaves with a fisherman, and they end up found on another island that it looks like they got caught on, and that other island had no usable water, so their bodies were found mummified years later. So that's pretty interesting.
Yep.
And then after this drought came and making it hard for the 2 couples to get everything that they wanted, they were having trouble with, as vegetarians, Ritter and Strach really suffered the most, so they decided to start eating meat as the drought intensified. So according to Strauch, they found dead chickens and decided to boil and eat them.
Ooh.
But the diseased chicken made Ritter sick, so sick that he died in agony, less than 5 months after the Baroness had disappeared. So Strauch doubted Whitmer's story about the Baroness's disappearance, and Whitmer didn't believe that Strauch was telling the truth about Ritter getting food poisoning because 2 people had eaten the poisoned meat and one ended up dying, while the other came all the way over to our house and still looked perfectly normal. So, as we mentioned, there was a lot of tension in the marriage of Ritter and Strauch, or the relationship, and then he ends up dead. Did he get what he deserved? What do you guys think? Do you think she killed him?
I'm going to let Christy take it. I'm not sure. I mean...
I don't. I don't think she has it in her. She was very docile. I mean, I just don't see it. And honestly, I don't think she really had anywhere to go. I mean, she did happen to catch a ride with a boat, but I just don't see it. No. I don't think I think the Whittemers killed the Baroness. Yes.
Yeah.
But
you think that Ritter died of natural food poisoning?
Yeah, I mean, he ate some shit he shouldn't have, and maybe only part of it was poisoned at the time, and he just ended up getting the bad part. I mean, you never know. I don't know. I just don't see it.
Well, because all of the chicken that they were eating, they were all in jars, though. So it's totally possible that...
Yeah,
it's totally possible that he could have grabbed a bad.
My understanding is that the woman wasn't a vegetarian before she came to the island. Maybe he had never really, your stomach actually does build up some tolerance to slightly off food if it's been exposed to it before. So I wonder if maybe she had a better stomach for something like that. But at any rate, so after Ritter died, though, Strauch got to get out of this nightmare. She went back to Germany. She wrote a book about this whole thing. And the poor Whitmers, as the only remaining settlers, their son died in a drowning accident. But the baby that was born on the island, Rolf, became a tourism pioneer in a way that would have made the Baroness proud, operating an upscale Galapagos yachting company. And the Whitmer's Lodge is TripAdvisor's #1 rated guest house for that island. Awesome location, but disappointing property, one review reads. So that is the story of that random, possibly kind of cult, kind of crazy drama that played out in the Galapagos. I have a bunch of stories of other cults, famous ones, and I wanted to go through them with you guys. Everybody's going to read a little bit of these. And most of these come from Cosmo Magazine, the 8 Scariest Cults of All Time. Mm-hmm. And the first one is the Manson family, which we've talked about quite a bit on this show. But obviously that's one of the more famous cults out there, with Manson's obsession with the Beatles' song Helter Skelter, using the term to describe a race war he believed that would usher in the apocalypse. So, and of course, he killed some famous people, Polanski's wife, that kind of thing. And then Yardley, tell me about the People's Temple.
Yeah, well, in the 1950s, Indiana native Jim Jones founded a church that he claimed promoted socialism and equality with religious elements of Christianity. Initially, he was little more than a charismatic hustler who faked faith healings by having audience plants pull chicken livers out of congregants' mouths. But as the years progressed, he demanded more and more of his followers. So in the early 1970s, Jones moved his group to California and set them up in a commune-like settlement in Redwood Valley. Jones eventually came to believe that nuclear war was imminent and moved his followers once again to the South American country of Guyana, which he thought would be outside the potential danger zone. The group lived there for several years as the People's Temple Agricultural Project, but after former members started speaking out against the church, San Francisco Congressman Leo Ryan decided to travel to Jonestown to investigate all the claims of abuse. When they arrived, temple security guards opened fire on Ryan's group, And also back at the settlement, Jones ordered his followers to drink a cyanide-laced beverage where the term drinking the Kool-Aid had originated. A total of 918 people died in the incident, and until 9/11, it was the largest loss of American civilian life in history.
Jesus.
I just listen. It's crazy. I just listened to a podcast from last podcast on the left, and they cover this, and it's like a 4-part series, but they really get some details and stuff that you never knew about, and it's fascinating if you're into, listening to 4 hours of People's Temple.
Had you heard about it before, Christy? Or?
Oh yeah. But I just didn't know they really dig some shit up, and they're very much into all the research, and they have, a huge team of people that dig shit up and interviews people, and it's fascinating though. If you wanted to even just skip to the last episode, because that's where they really talk about the day of what happened and just where he was. I mean, he was totally out of his mind on drugs and high all the time, and being down there wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and not for him either, because he went from being able to kind of hide his drug addiction and his psychosis to being around these people all the time in the middle of a jungle. And it's fascinating to read. Like, these people actually did good, and he actually did a lot for the civil rights movement at the time, especially in Indiana. But, I mean, that's always something
was that by
they do.
Having people, just everybody in his church, and so that was for the civil rights, as far as like everyone was equal, kind of, besides him?
Well, at the time in Indiana, this was in the 50s and 60s, where people were starting to, equal rights and everything, but it wasn't, some of these states just still were not following that. And so he started a church that was predominantly black, and instead of just preaching, he would go to each person and be like, what's your problem? What do you need? And they're like, I can't get an electric person to come to my home because I'm black. And he would shame them, and they would come. I mean, he did a lot of shit that you would think he was in the right path, and he's like one of the single-handedly politically got people in Indiana to actually go by new laws that they just were ignoring, and did quite a bit of good. But I think it was just to get a following versus the real purpose of it. And then, of course, we see he's a complete psychopath. But, I mean, it's weird. He started out as such a good guy that you think is there for the right reasons, and then they all follow him down. And and it was, I think, like, by the time they went to South America, it was probably 50% black, 50% white. They were all just wanting to be in a group of people that all cared and loved about each other. It was just a crazy political time, and it's honestly I cannot talk enough about it. That podcast about this, the Jim Jones, it's I believe four parts, or maybe even 5, and it really, I was gripped. Like, could not wait to get in my car to finish listening to it. Just the detail, and they know so much. I mean, they talk about him from when he's a kid on up. So it's a really interesting read that almost 1,000 people died following this man. And by the way, half of those people were forced to drink it. They weren't just drinking it.
Nice.
Like, when he proclaimed, we're doing this, and he had done this trial run several times, where he would give them drinks, and he'd be like, you just drank poison, and he would judge their reaction to see if they freaked out or if they were like, cool, I'm gonna die, And so this was like the 3rd or 4th run, and it was the real one. So they didn't know when they were drinking it until people started dying that this was actually the time that they had been prepared for. And,
well, I'm glad you brought that up, Christy, because a lot of people do think that a lot of these people were just so into it that they did it, and a lot of them did it under the gun,
Or they were shot in the head. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty brutal. Because
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just saying I saw a documentary, and then when you watch, because they do have, some of the stuff that had there's video footage of like when the congressman got shot out
Mm-hmm.
on the little tarmac thing that
Yeah.
they had, but then you see that there are kids and all of that stuff. I mean, that situation was really horrendous.
The kids were first, and in fact, like they actually play because everything is recorded, and they actually play the recordings of him ushering them up to get in line, and his wife is screaming and crying because the first people that went were the kids, and they're forcing the kids to drink this stuff, and you can hear her, and they call her mother, and he's like, mother, mother, like, and they hold her down and force her to have it, and he didn't drink it, he got shot in the head. So it's just, I mean, what a fucking story. And to find out that these people, most or half at least, did not drink it willingly is just crazy. But and the reality is they were in the middle of a jungle. I mean, a lot of people tried to escape and died trying to get out because they're in the middle of a fucking jungle, you know? So it was just crazy. Like, I can't even imagine.
No, dude.
So anyway, sorry, I didn't want to
Speaking
get
of
into
crazy
that.
that you can't imagine, tell me about Heaven's Gate.
Oh,
Well,
go ahead.
well, quickly, the podcast that you were talking about, was that Hardcore History? That guy?
No, it's the last podcast on the left.
Okay.
They do some great. They're my favorite podcast. Like, I freaking love them. They're hysterical. One of them is like a comedic actor, and then the other two are like they're just. One of them is like the brains, and then the other one plays like devil's advocate, and then you've got the guy that does all the like character, like he takes on the characters and like reenacts them and stuff. It's freaking hysterical. But they also get really, like, right now I'm in the middle of Tupac and Biggie, and they're like basically talking about how all of that happened. Like, I didn't know like how much they were involving like, I knew they were quote unquote involved with rap war, like Bloods and Crips, but I didn't know to what extent. And so they really break that down. So they just do some really interesting takes on different stuff throughout history, and I dig them. They're great. So I've recommended them before, but I can't recommend them enough. So anyway,
Nice.
All right. Well, I will move on to Heaven's Gate. Founded by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles in the 1970s, Heaven's Gate was ascetic cult that had a complicated belief set involving aliens, spaceships, and imminent recycling of planet Earth. Which sounds an awful lot like Scientology. But anyway,
is what I was thinking. Yeah.
yeah. After Nettles died in 1985, Applewhite took the group to an even further extreme. In 1997, he began claiming that a spacecraft was following the Halley-Bopp comet. This spacecraft would carry the Heaven's Gate members to the next level of existence. While living in a rented home in San Diego, Applewhite and 38 of his followers died by suicide by taking phenobarbital mixed with applesauce. They all wore the same uniform and Nike shoes and had $5.75 in their pockets. Why? As of today, the Heaven's Gate website still exists and is maintained by two of the group's followers.
Well, clearly they missed their comet, so they've got to stay behind. Somebody has to update the website, get that blog going. Jesus. So the one that I actually was interested that I mentioned last week was the Smiley Face Murders. It's what they're known for, and it's something I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about because it's highly it's debated because basically there are supposedly going back to the 90s the connection of the deaths of 45 college-age males whose dead bodies were found in water in 11 states after leaving parties or bars where they were drinking. So, of course, it fits that a college-age male who has been drinking is prone to having an accident if he's around water. So it's believable that these men have died. However, you have the families who want a better answer for why their children have died and that kind of thing. And so supposedly the term a smiley face has been left somewhere around near the bodies. And also, a lot of the time, it seems like the bodies that the people haven't been actually died of drowning. They actually died elsewhere and were dumped into the water where they were found. But again, this spans a lot of years and a lot of victims and a lot of states. So, police have said it's not related, but of course, these are all different jurisdictions and that kind of thing. And the most interesting article I found about it that I'm pretty sure crashed my computer, so I removed it from our document here. But the most interesting story is from someone who is writing a book about it. So take it with a grain of salt. His website crashes computers and he's writing a book about it. So kind of fuck you, dude, by the way. But it says that all of these men, supposedly, this is what he says. They all had desperate phone calls right before they died, which you can trace phone calls, so whatever. But it would make a really cool movie. Is basically they make a desperate phone call right before they're found dead, and then they die of, like, some of them were tortured. I think that might be true in a couple of the cases, but again, you're talking about 45 different deaths. And then the men's bodies are found in water, but clearly haven't been killed by drowning. And their phones are found somewhere as if it was staged. Their phones are found nearby. And of course, the smiley face. The smiley face is super creepy. And I fit it into cult because I just don't see how the smiley face part of it is a coincidence, even if the rest is made up or sort of, guessed upon. But it's just interesting how physically fit and athletic all of these men are. We're not talking about the college guy who's playing video games in his basement all day. We're talking about, like, strapping young men that, even drunk, like, would probably be pretty strong swimmers, would probably be pretty strong to fight someone who was trying to hurt them. It is an interesting curiosity what has happened to these men. Have either of you heard of this before?
I have not. No.
Ouch. Just based off of what we've talked about, what do you think is happening? Do you think it's related, or do you think that it's just a case of A, some people trying to get famous off of saying it's related, and B, families trying desperately to just make more sense of what's happened to their loved ones?
Don't they call those things copycat? Don't they call that? Is that what you're talking about? Kind of like people?
Yeah, it's either a copycat or it's a gang, but you're keeping it real on the down low.
I say it's some fucked up women's sorority.
Oh.
National Women's Sorority that's like, all right, you have to kill a college male in your college to get accepted into our sorority. Yeah, I'm going there. I'm getting real
That is
deep
a good
in
way
the
to get close to a man, in college.
I see a new horror movie.
Come swim at the
coming
water
out.
with me.
Yeah, I like you. You're cute. Thanks for coming to my rush party. Now you're gonna die.
Well, on
you
that
fucked
note,
me and my roommate. Now you gotta die.
Yeah, it's super duper interesting story. Again, the smiley faces look cool if you Google them. They're, it's a creepy. It gives you an unsettling feeling that these things might be related, but who knows? And if we get any new news on it, I will certainly update us. But in the meantime, Yardley, do you want to tell us about the next one?
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians broke off from the Davidian Seventh-day Adventists in 1955, but didn't make headlines until the Waco siege of 1993. In 1981, David Koresh-born Vernon Howell took over the group, which was headquartered at a commune called Mount Carmel. After allegations of child abuse at the commune, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms attempted to raid Mount Carmel, but a gun battle erupted and 10 people were killed. The FBI then launched a siege that lasted for 51 days and ended with the compound being destroyed by fire. Koresh was killed along with 76 others. The government investigation later concluded that the Branch Davidians had started the fire themselves. Now, we all know when it comes with the government being involved in something, that is automatic conspiracy, that the government is the one that started the fire, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, the thing that's even more amazing, and I remember back when this was going down, is just the fact that 51-day siege, we'll never see the likes of that again. Like, nobody's going to put up with that type of shit for 51 days ever again.
Well, they did that shit at the bird sanctuary in Oregon. I don't think it was 51 days, but it was more longer. It's like basically white men can hang out in fucking buildings no matter what the fuck they're up to for lollygagging 51 days a month. Whatever. We're just here on the outside checking on you. You know what? I just, again, last podcast on the left, listen to this one too. And they actually have it on tape of him commanding them to start the fires. So it's like people can have their conspiracy theories all they want. And the government fucked this up big time. Like the way they handled this goes down as like basically now what not to do is the training. This is what they use. What they did, the way they handled it was horrible, but in that one defense, they have, because they were talking via walkie-talkies, and they have David saying, start the fires and lock the kids up and all the shit. So it was like, I don't know how you conspiracy theory that shit.
Yeah, whatever, like you said, white men can hole up and be ready to take on the government, and no one does anything until it's way too late. But anyways,
moving on. Or shoot up a news organization, but hey, let's just keep going.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, so you would give me the one that has all the big is this Japanese words? Yeah. Okay.
You got this.
Shinrikyo. Okay.
Yes.
Founded by Shoko Ashara in 1984. Shinrikyo first made headlines in the late 80s amid accusations Ashara was forcing members to donate money to the group and holding them against their will. Well, damn. Like many cult leaders, Ashara believed in an imminent doomsday, this time caused by a world war started by the United States. Well, I mean, he may not be wrong. Yeah. According to him, only his followers would survive. Well, okay. In 1995, the group executed a sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway, which caused the deaths of 12 people and injured 50 more. After that attack, Japanese authorities learned that the group had also been responsible for the murder of lawyer... Yeah,
a lawyer. Yeah,
Satsumi Sakamoto, who was working on a class action lawsuit against Shirin Yiko at the time of his death. The group also murdered his wife and child. Well, fuck, God, these people ain't fucking around.
Yeah, that's a shady one too, because working against it. Yeah, I mean. It's kind of like the thing with Manson, where it started with basically one dude has a grudge against another dude and starts a whole fucking cult just to cover his crime and, you know, be looked at as the hero of this piece. But it looks like this was all over a goddamn lawsuit. So
isn't that funny how these cults, like the leader ends up getting karma executed on their enemies? Wow, what a coincidence. It's
I know,
amazing.
Right? Yeah, murdered his wife and child. I mean, come on now, though. Like, what's up with that?
They're like, we're not just killing you. We're going after everybody.
Everybody you've ever loved. So, yeah, that's good time. So I just wanted to kind of talk about cults in general a little bit. Have any of you ever known anyone who you at least suspect was involved in a cult at all?
You know... You know, It's funny. There's somebody who I follow on Instagram, and they're into like a lot of natural healing and things like that. And sometimes they post videos or photographs of like them and a group of other individuals. They're all like dressed in a familiar color, and they're doing all of these things, but more or less to the tune of, you know, there's, like I said, natural healing and, you know, all of this energy stuff or whatever. But the more I see of it, I'm like, it's like, it kind of seems like it's a cult, even
Red
though I
flag.
know, yeah, even though I know that, well, I think I know that it's the best of intentions about, opening up yourself and,
Hmm.
centering yourself and, positive vibes and all of these things. But it does seem like that's a cult. It might not necessarily be something that is harming people, but just looking at, how they interact with each other. And it's kind of weird. I think that it's meant to be a positive thing, at least in
Yeah.
that case, but it just comes off as, man, this looks a little, looks a little
Well,
culty.
I would assume cults, when they're actually starting, probably are supposed to look like they're like that's the premises is they're helping you and they mean well. I mean, that's how it gets started, you know? So, of
Well, and
course.
they could be, but then there's unfortunately my view is it's human nature that changes the direction of something like that, you know? I mean, if it doesn't start with a grudge, so like we were just talking about where right off the bat it's just because one individual wants to get back at somebody or something, I feel like it is always the best of intentions. I'm gonna help people, I'm gonna gather them around me, but eventually I think you get that kind of power by other people thinking your shit don't stink, and next thing is you're thinking
Hmm.
your shit don't stink, and then it kind of gets out of control. What about you, Christy? Have you ever met anybody or known anybody that you suspected?
I mean, besides the Red Hat cult, no, I don't know anybody in a cult, and I really don't really have any interest in joining one. I would have to be, you're asking me what it would take to lure me in. It would be probably free wine or something. I don't know, but, and I
Shit, if a
would,
van pulled up and said I've got
yeah.
candy in the back, I'm like, I'm joining. So
Yeah, I don't care about the candy. Now, the wine and nachos, yeah, they could probably get me with that. But otherwise, eh. I don't have really any interest in secluding myself or thinking that there's the only answer is within like one small group. Like I red flags go off when I see shit like that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think people that end up in cults are vulnerable, mentally ill, um, feeling fear. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to it, but
Needy.
yeah, needy. They want to be something special and just cannot live with the fact that maybe they're not. So therefore, just joining this group, it sets them apart. That they're willing to kill themselves or harm themselves in some way. That to believe it.
Well, I
Uh,
think it starts off slowly, like any
oh
kind
yeah.
of abuse to other humans. Like if you're in a relationship and
Yeah.
it's going well, and then someone says something that's not very nice, and then they apologize, and then it's going well, and that's the kind of thing, everyone is looking for something in their lives. And I
Yep.
think, a particularly broken or weak-minded person would find a cult that's malicious right off the front end, but for the rest of it, I mean, people argue that all religion is a cult, and I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that, like, you go to a faith because these are people that share your belief system. You're looking for something bigger than yourself. And I could see it just kind of snowballing and escalating until you're
Yeah.
like, what the fuck are we actually doing here?
Absolutely.
Preying off of your vulnerabilities. That's what
Yes.
all of those things that we
Yep.
mentioned do. You're
Bingo.
vulnerable. That's how somebody gets in. Kind of similar to our review. Gosh, what was the movie that we reviewed about the demon getting into the
Mm,
guy?
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
remember the name of it. And
Hereditary.
it was my Hereditary.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's sort of like that, how we were talking about, Peter had to be vulnerable for the evil spirit to get in
Yeah.
him. And I think that this is totally the same. People play off of your vulnerability. And I think that, that might be a pretty decent size, thing to kind of get someone into one of these situations. So I think you just kind of have to sometimes, what do people say? You've got to know self, because unless you really know yourself, someone else might be able to exploit the thing that you're looking for.
Yeah. I
True.
I know somebody whose parents, when he was a teen, he and his brother were teenagers, decided to join a cult. And as teenagers, good on them, these two were basically strong enough to say, we are not going to do this with you, parents. And so their parents disowned them. They have never heard from their parents again. Moved to another state to be with this cult, and had some belief systems that the boys just couldn't abide by, and the parents were like, fine, then goodbye to you. And so obviously that made them stronger as brothers together because they never had parents after that. So it was kind of a crazy situation. I kind of wonder, like, okay, it's one thing for one person to feel so broken that they need to, find themselves through a cult, but to have two people that are in a relationship with one another to still be like, this sounds like a good idea, and by the way, let's leave our children, like, kind of judgmental on that. It's a bit much. But so anyway, any final thoughts on cults before we wrap up for the week?
Cult's bad.
Yeah, don't do it.
Exactly.
You're all special snowflakes to us. You don't have to join a cult to be told that.
No. Enjoy your life. You don't have to seclude yourself and kill people or yourself.
Don't have to drink poison Kool-Aid, guys.
You don't have to burn yourself alive. Come on.
Murder women and children. There are a few movies to recommend if you're interested in reading about some more cults. I can post this. It's a bunch of Netflix specific movies that you can, either documentaries or reenactments, that look pretty interesting, with the exception, as far as the way that the documentary was done, of the Galapagos affair, which we watched for this week. But I will post this link to our Facebook page in case you guys want to kind of watch along. But in the meantime, Christy, was there any news? Do we just want to remind people about the giveaway that's happening?
No, giveaway announcement. We got our winners. Because by the time this airs, it's July, 3rd? Yeah,
3rd,
that's the get. So I went ahead and chose our giveaway winners. They already know. I already contacted them. They're all have responded this morning and very happy. I counted up all the entries and had my family choose 3 numbers, and those were the giveaways, and I think we did a pretty good job. Jay, her name is Horror Madam, and so I think that went pretty well. And she won one, and then a podcast actually won one, Corpus Delicti Pod. It's basically true crime, and I've listened to a couple of their shows, and they're really good. They won. They're based out of Alabama. And then Mel G, her hashtag is Melian108. She was like, oh my gosh, drinking, tumblers, and horror. It's like the mothership called me home. So I was like super happy. She was so excited when she won. So congratulations, y'all. And I'll be shipping them out this next week. And Yardley, I still have yours. And last week was a bitch. I could not. It was bad.
Fuck last week, man.
But last week can go sit on many, many things and spin. I can tell you that.
And rotate. Yep.
Yeah, so I have it, and I will either meet you somewhere, which I probably will do that if it's okay, and we can dine, because you eat at the best fucking spots. Like, I'm
Dude,
jealous,
I want to fly out there just to go eat with you guys. That was amazing.
Seriously. He knows all the good
that's
places to eat, and I'll hand deliver it. But anyway, thank you guys for participating. And I just, really quick, want to give a shout out. I don't know what happened. Ooh, excuse me. My voice died. I don't know what happened in the last month, but we went from like 30 followers to 550, and it's been pretty fantastic. We're growing like leaps and bounds every day. And I just decided to kind of break down the location of where these people are coming from. And I thought it would be interesting to know that, well, number one is the United States. I don't think anybody got that, would have guessed any differently. United Kingdom coming in strong is number 2, and Australia and Canada are almost tied for 3rd. Now, I got a goal that I want y'all listeners to help me with. I want to breach Iceland and Greenland, because we got no downloads from Iceland and Greenland. If we can get that,
we gotta pop their cherries.
Exactly. We will dominate the whole northern hemisphere if we can get them. Because we got Russia, we got all kinds. We got Ireland and France and all this. We don't have Iceland and Greenland. So if you know somebody from there, please, even if it's just one download, I am here for it. Give it to me. I want to see those 2 islands, countries, whatever the hell continents you want to call them. I want to see them turn coral, because right now they're a boring shade of gray. So please, reaching out to anybody. Let's share this shit and get that done for me by next week. That would be wonderful.
Nice. Yes,
That's
yes.
all I got.
All right, Yardley, what's going on next week?
Hey, next week, you know what? We're going to do a review of The Boy from 2016 with Lauren Cohen. And the synopsis is an American nanny is shocked that her new English family's boy is actually a life-size doll. After she violates a list of strict rules, disturbing events make her believe that the doll is really alive. And I find it interesting that an English actress, Lauren Cohen, is pretending to be an American taking care of an English family's boy.
That movie's really fucked up. I've seen it. So
Taking our jobs.
Have you seen it, Moni, as well?
I have not seen it. I've been interested in it. I've heard mixed things, but I love me some Lauren Cohen, so I'm excited to now have to watch it. So it won't be any Jeepers Creepers 3 or even the Galapagos Islands.
darn.
But I guess I have to do.
I feel like I've seen it, but I can't really recall. So I look forward to revisiting it. And yeah, well, we'll see what Lauren Cohen brings to the table in horror. So I think that that'll be fun. Of course, we'll do a little weird news as well, and we'll try to keep up with anything that's kind of weird or paranormal throughout the week. So I think next week will be fun.
Slick. Okay, so social media follows. Christy, where do we find you?
I'm just going to give you Twitter because that's what I'm doing right now. I apologize. My Facebook game and my Instagram game are a little weak. I'm on at creepin_it. I'd love it because I basically run the main Twitter account for the show. It would be great if y'all just stopped by and said hi and tell us, because I do share the information, what you think of the show.
Very nice. Yardley?
You can follow me on Twitter at militant_marker.
And I am Moni Bear, MoniBarre. Pretty much everywhere, but it'll pop up if not. And I just wanted to wish our creepers a happy, fun, and safe 4th of July, even though it's on a fucking Wednesday. But we hope you have a great week, and we will talk to you next time.
Creep it real.
Walking down the street, all the fun